can AI replace the traditional bike fitter? Today we're here with famous bike fitter Phil Burt to see if we can find out and answer some of those questions. The app that we're going to be using today is an app called MyVeloFit. There are another couple of apps out there on the market, but that's the one that we've used before. We've been toying around with it on like individual basis, but today was all about Phil coming here to help us to see if we can integrate it into our standard workflow. Can it actually add to what we're already doing? Can it fill the gap between what we do and a really professional bike fitter that's got all the Retül systems and the saddle pressure mapping? Can we bridge that gap without having the whole big setup rig here? And this is an important quandary for me because I've talked about bike fitting on the channel before, and previously when we've discussed this, I've always thought about bike fitting as being a bit of a triangle. You need someone with got really good understanding of the human body, the biomechanics, the physiology. You also need someone to understand the bike and what's actually capable, what parts can you switch out, make it safe. But you also need to understand the handling characteristics and whatever you change and how that's going to make the bike feel, because ultimately if you make a bike very twitchy and nervous, you're going to be uncomfortable because you're going to be tensed up. So we see ourselves as very much biased towards the handling and the mechanical side, and Phil's expertise is obviously very much in the physio side. So bringing that all together to see if we can improve our services here. So what is MyVeloFit? Essentially, you're doing everything off an iPhone these days. So rather than using our video cameras and our slow motion video capture that we used before, we're doing the same thing but using an iPhone. What's really happening with the AI is that it is tracking all of your key joints, so your shoulders, your hip, your knee, your ankle. So when you go to a fitter that might use something like Retül, you'll get fitted up with lots of little different sensors, and it's really important that fitter knows exactly where to put those sensors, but it's going to monitor those in real time and then feed back on the computer screen where all those angles are and where they should be. Phil calls it fit into numbers, and a lot of bike fitters just like to try and get every single number in the green range. We'll come on to that in a second. Essentially, this is doing the same thing, and it does a remarkably good job. You can literally plonk the camera down, film someone, upload it, and the AI works out exactly where all those key joints are, frame by frame of the video, and then essentially does what the Retül system does for you, and then presents that information back to you as the fitter with actionable things that you can do to improve the fit. Let me show you. So here's a video that we uploaded from Hannah, and you can see the little red dots are what it is tracking. You can also see where it's been tracking various vertical planes, and it reports this on pedal bottom dead center, top dead center, and it gives you an idea of where the ideal ranges are. Now, these ranges, what's really interesting, comes from a mobility assessment, which you can also do using the iPhone app. And then you give it a certain parameter, like how do you want your bike to be? Do you want it to be a performance fit or a comfort fit? So these ranges come from the outcome of your mobility assessment and the questionnaire that you provided, much like going to see a real fitter. Up the top here, it gives us very clear instructions as to what recommendations it's saying. So here it will say lower the saddle by 10 millimeters, and then saddle fore and aft will be assessed. Once it knows that the saddle height is optimum, it will tell you when to adjust this, the handlebar height, the handlebar reach, and then any other things that it notes. And then basically you get back on the bike, you make another video, upload the video, and go through the whole process. What it doesn't do right now is it doesn't do it in real time. There is still a process of recording something on the iPhone, uploading it, letting the video process, actioning the recommendations, recording another video. So with Phil here doing the staff training today, what we were trying to learn was how a rider might try and cheat the system, so to speak. What can riders do that might manipulate the results, how we as fitter can observe it and correct it. So for instance, when you're doing your bend over test to reach your toes, it's quite easy to maybe lock your legs out or not. Maybe when you're doing your squat and you're lifting your heels. So Phil was giving us guidance as to what the key things are to look for to make sure we get really clean input going into the AI. After all, it's only ever going to be as good as what you put into it. And then when we come to the results, helping us translate it, because there are certain things that it can't do. And what we've learned, it's very, very good at trying to correct your current bike in its current setup. What we've learned is that so far, it's not very good at picking up things that you might want to change. For instance, crank length. So it might suggest raising the saddle, but does that independently of what a difference in crank length might do. It's not that clever yet. So Phil described this as, do you fit to the numbers or do you fit to the person? And what he's referring to that is the Retül system. It's very easy for a bike fitter to put the sensors on and then just try and make all the lights go green. You'll keep adjusting until the lights go green, where a really good fitter will be much more concentrated on the person and constantly looking for that feedback and making sure that if something is out of sync, maybe one of the numbers is red, does that actually matter if the person is more comfortable with it, or is there something else going on that might affect those numbers? And that's what this AI isn't doing yet. So there's still very much the need for a skilled fitter just to have a bit of overview. In reality, I think for an awful lot of people, this AI is going to tick the boxes, because what we have learned that it gets a little bit confused with macro absorbers, people that are very high mobility, that can sit on a lot of things and can absorb lots of different bike fits. It works better with the micro adjusters, the people that are a little bit more pinpoint in their bike measurements. So with that in mind, we are going to be exploring a lot more of this over the coming months. We're going to be integrating it into our fits, seeing what you guys think when you come to your fits, using both systems concurrently. But for now, let's go and have a catch up with Phil and see where this has all come from. Phil Burt, ex-Team GB, Team Sky. You've now got your own practice in Manchester.
Yep.
Thanks so much for spending the day with Tom and Hannah. Their first ever day of ever being doing any sort of bike fit training. They are through and through mechanics, so I think it went quite well.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a lot of talking, a lot of transfer of information, but just starting to explore how they can use some of the things I've learned over a long period of time in your practice.
So of course they're here because of the MyVeloFit app.
Yes.
That's where this has come from. We've been working with it for a little bit. You've been working with them a lot. And this has all come about because we're trying to experiment whether we can use some AI bike fitting with some human to human interaction and see if we can improve the experience. So can you just tell everyone what's the MyVeloFit AI app and Phil Burt? Where's that come from? What's happened?
So what was interesting was during lockdown and COVID, we were inundated with inquiries from people who couldn't get to a bike fit because everyone was closed. But what did everyone do during that period of time? Their cycling went through the roof. And I offered, just as because people were out begging for it, as a remote service. I never would have thought remote bike fitting would have worked, but basically people used to send me videos. I give them a questionnaire, they described their problem, and it was unbelievably successful.
I bet it was.
It was, but I was inundated with people who from the middle of Australia, America, and I was wondering. And two things that I don't. Just to start off with, I think on the spectrum of bike fit, you can go and buy my book, Bike Fit, and I think I'm more than happy if someone goes out and buys Phil Burt Bike Fit and they sort their knee cycling problem out. And then you got the in-person fit with me in Manchester with all the kit, saddle pressure, we can make all those different things, but geographically, some people can't make it to that. Financially, it's a bit of a barrier to someone buying 2 hours of your time, doing that. And I think what AI is enabling is that, some of the kit that we use is very expensive, but where AI data capture is going, how it can visually recognize things, there's already all of a sudden democratized bike fit. So what you can do is you can download this web-based application and it will fit to numbers. So that is better than you guessing.
I have to admit, it is doing a better job than I think I could sometimes of pinpointing various points on the human body and tracking it. We normally put sensors on and track it around. It's doing a fantastic job.
But when it came about, I wouldn't put my name to something unless it would work. So I benchmarked it against the thing that I've used for many years, which is a high-end motion analysis capture tool that is well used in the industry, and it's unbelievable how it benchmarks. There's always user error in there, how you set it up and things like that. But if that taken aside, as long as you're using it the right way, it all of a sudden gives us numbers. Now, that's fitting to numbers, all right? So what the difference is what
which we know you're not a fan of.
No, well, I think when you fit to numbers, we're trying to push everyone into the same range. And what you've got to recognise is the art of bike fitting in some ways is, and why being a physiotherapist lends me a bit of an advantage, you have to understand the human being in front of you. And that's what we've been talking a lot about today, about common things that happen commonly that people have described. And I think what I've learned from my time as being a bike for the last 15 years is, if you listen to people, they tend to tell you what the problem is, and then the objective data capture helps us, right, that's because of that, and then we can adjust the position. Always say, remember, the bike's adjustable and you're adaptable, and I'm getting less adaptable.
Your catchphrase now.
Yeah, I'm getting less adaptable.
I feel like I could get more power down right now when I just rode it than I could previously. However, I have to admit this is more uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's been MyVeloFit. I've been consulting with them, helping them out, because just like writing my book, it like democratizes great bike fit advice, and we're going to talk a bit further about that.
I think you're definitely at the forefront of the technology. It must be exciting to see there is AI technology emerging that's almost as good as what Retül can do in terms of tracking things, which is incredible. And it must be really exciting to actually be a part of it rather than trying to catch up with it. That's what's really cool.
Yes.
It's like, let's get in there and like work it out and what can AI do for us.
Yeah.
But I think what I learned today was the output that you get is only as good as the input you put in. I think that's the key thing that we've learned. It's like when you're at home, you've got to really translate what it's asking, whereas here, with your expertise and your guidance, you've said, okay, this is what to look for. So the mobility test, can you just talk us through like what those mobility tests are trying to achieve, what they're telling the AI?
So at the beginning, the other thing it does, because it's already created almost like a cloud that you can see and it can track you, is some well-recognized basic things like a squat pattern, a single leg raise, bending and touching your toes. It can analyse your mobility. Now you can override that and tell it that you're really flexible if you think you are, but if you want a truth analysis, it can analyse that. Now here's the important thing is, when you come up with fit ranges for what your ideal saddle height is, which is normally based upon your knee extension or how flexed or how bent your knee or how straight it is at the bottom of the pedal stroke, right? That changes through our lifestyle for the type of riding you're doing. So what's the goal on the bike? But it also changes relative to you. If you've got really tight hamstrings, there's no point me telling you should be riding this really high sound, because you're not going to do it and you're not going to be comfortable. So you either have to become more flexible or we have to adapt the position to what you're like, okay? That video analysis, if you do that on MyVeloFit, it automatically adjusts all the ranges. So it's basically already a personal fit to you through the video analysis, which is, and we all overrate our flexibility. I generally find people think they're a bit more flexible. We don't like saying we're rubbish. I think having that bit of objectivity, well, I'm not quite as good as I was, and then the ranges change and they help you to get into whatever it is, a performance, comfort, longevity position better.
Yeah, I think it's definitely it's easy to like cheat or exaggerate, isn't it, when you've got it actually recorded and someone says, no, you're really this. It's a bit of a reality check. And you go, okay, fair enough, like let's fit me to that. So for me it was the shoulder one, like I was way off, like appalling. There are changes. I always try and say to people, there's no bad positions, there are only better positions, and I'm not a physio or judges. I just want to see what we got with you. We don't want to be unrealistic in the expecting, and then we can adapt everything, and that's what it automatically does within the ranges, so that you can use it yourself at home to get there. And then, as we said, with you, if we're teaching this in-person fit, is like recognising those things that which numbers are the most important ones to listen to. I think for me, that's what I valued most from the human-to-human part of the AI bike fit, was seeing you teach us how to help someone with their mobility tests. You know, what are we actually looking for? Okay, no, that wasn't very good. Just do that again. Or this is what I'm trying to achieve. And yes, I can see you cheated it just there. Don't do that. Yeah, and it's those little things that really make the difference, I think, of just getting the really good data to go in.
Yeah, because the guys are bike mechanics. They're not trained physios like me. So if you ask them to touch their toes, they can do it in about, there's loads of different ways you can do it. You bend your knees, you get down there. It doesn't mean you've got great lumbar flexibility. What the app does is it recognises certain key parameters and where they're doing, and then gives you a rating about how you're achieving that in that multi-joint faceted way. So it just gives you a bit more insight and knowledge about how that's occurring, Plus people tell you as well, and that's why what the main thing we talked today about is listen. People tell you what the problem is or tell you what the solution is as well.
Yeah, and I think the human element is still important to translate what the app is telling you a little bit.
100%.
That was interesting. So what interesting for me is this is like another level of bike fitting, but I'm not quite sure where that level sits. And I think about the big spectrum of bike fitting from, I guess I used to be leant up against the wall in my shed with a plumb line and like trying to line it up with my pedal axle, right the way up to come to see someone like yourself with a full Retül system, like and everything in between, bike shops and fit systems. Where do you see this fitting now, and what do you think its potential is?
So I think right at the base end, you got, like you say, your basic rules of thumb, right? And bike fitting to numbers 101, so those things like the Le Mans method of setting up your saddle height, then you go all the way through to coming to see me. And some people, I don't think the in-person bike fit will ever be completely replaced, because some people will need that. People have very specific problems, certain types of saddle injury, knee injury, injuries that happen to themselves, asymmetries. They're going to need the in-person. There's always going to be a remit and a space for that. But what's in between is like, So you got that there, then you got but I think is this where AI's enablers is to gather more objective, accurate information about someone where they can make a decision about their bike setup. So it's coming in that middle ground, and that means it's democratizing bike fit a bit more because it's opening it up to more people. And then if you think about a lot of bike shops out there or practices, they're not going to be able to afford all this very high expensive kit that they have to. But if they can have this happen and start to use it and start to understand human beings and more and understand the problems they present, that means that if those people become more proficient, then we're getting better advice out there.
Yeah, it makes me reflect on my own practice. I guess we are, or I think of myself as step 2 and 3, and that is you've brought a bike, you've had a go at it yourself, I need a bit of help. And that's, I can normally go broad strokes that I was thinking about. Okay, I've got a broad strokes fit, dial it in a little bit, and then I say, do you know what, now I need to refer to either yourself or Vic upstairs and get a bit of help with something to get the fine detail. This to me is almost helping me take my bike fit in just another little bit further before the point of referral, just another little point. You might have just on that day forgotten about this, and the app reminds you, oh yeah, just go back and check that.
Yes.
There's another little detail that some days you can get, oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So,
some days you'll be thinking, why isn't this working? And by doing the flexibility, mobility assessment at the beginning, it sort of understand, hold on a minute, they've quite restricted there, so that makes sense with this. And you start to recognize those patterns that common things happen commonly, There's always the outliers, but if we start to recognize those major things and we can impart that knowledge about, and then what are the solutions that work for that? For example, when decreasing crank length works for tight hips and knee pain and things like that, and the other thing is that we do have that other level that I talked to you about the referral, so when the other beauty of this, I think when to refer, what you just said, is so important.
And actually that's built into the app. There's a button that you can press, like refer, and can you talk us through what happens when you press that button that says refer?
Yeah, so what I've been mainly working with MyVeloFit was a recognition that they had a tool that, the same as buying a bike fit book, if that sets you up and you're fine, you're comfortable, brilliant, and then the app gets you that bit further again, but it is limited because it understands things, but it's fit into numbers. If there's those more specific things in there and you want to go to another level, but you can't geographically, financially, or you can't go for an in-person bike fit, you press the expert review button. Basically, I can come and look at your data. It costs a little bit more, but it's nowhere near the price of a full bike fit. But what we can do is you fill in a questionnaire, and we look at all your data compared to that. Look, I come in and have a look at it, give my expert analysis, you get a video and a plan backwards about what to do. So that again, that sits in that space from a spectrum of doing it yourself all the way to in person. That's coming in here where you can get someone to just anywhere in the world.
And in your experience of doing that, are you at that point fine tuning, or are you correcting input data, or something went wrong at the start here, that's why you're getting this result? Or are you going, if I were you, just to help with that little problem you've got, I would just make this little change?
100%. It's those things, those nuances that people can't see. So sometimes it'll flag it up. The app's really good at recognizing when the numbers are actually quite out, and it might be you've recorded this wrong. But it normally, that's that nugget of information where I'll say, it's the expertise to override fitting to numbers. So a classic example is I just can't seem to get this right. And you look at them and go, the 175 cranks are not letting you get where you got to get to.
Okay,
and that's when you say, we need to reduce that parameter. Everything else, I see more people, they have good positions for the wrong kit, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And for another example, width of saddle can make a massive difference. So what my job is there is to come over the top, and that's why it took me 9 months to write the questionnaire, because it's actually asking very specific questions all the way through, and we get this colourful picture of the person, and then what I can do is apply what I've learned over a long period of time about why does that normally happen, and it brings that, as you say, don't be scared of AI. It's going to help us do more gather the data and the capture the things it's really good at, but you'll always need that human interaction and interpretation, so understanding what the goal is and then giving them the solution that will work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing for me is, we're a bike shop, you're the first bike shop that you're working with, which is fantastic, thank you. But you've been working with some other big brands on this, haven't you?
Oh yeah, some really big brands. We're not allowed to talk about them, but people are seeing
brands that sell direct, who are trying to bring the prices down for consumers by cutting out the middleman a little bit, which I'm on board with, don't get me wrong. But how do you see that working in reality? Someone at home with the app, and then trying to determine which bike size is right for them, or maybe using a configurator to choose crank length.
Well, there is
a
a sizing function within the app as well, within the MyVeloFit, which is it sizes you, and then there's loads of bikes in there, and it'll give you a better idea. I just think the more information you get, the better chance. I always say, like, when people come for a bike fit, I've got 3 mottos, right? I say, okay, so you're here to save time, effort, and money, all right? That's what I'm here to do for you. I don't want you to waste time. Second thing is, I don't want you to be a monkey throwing a dart or a dartboard, right? So I think if you do some of the mobility analysis, assess your current position, say you're going to buy a new bike, you've got to be in a better position of landing somewhere near the right thing. Now, it can always go wrong slightly towards the end, but you're going to be much more, you're honing it down to, if you land in that space, we're going to be happy.
Yeah, I'm personally really excited by the future because now with so much integration, much less waste. How many times do we swap out a sweep post for a zero layback?
Yeah.
How many times do we reduce someone's handlebar width? How many times do we switch someone's crank lengths? It's
my life.
And if we could get at least a little bit closer at the point of sale,
exactly.
I'm all up for that. And then those bigger brands can, at factory, rather than supply another 42 centimetre bar.
And it's such a waste, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. So to the really, really smart people who, if you ask me, sometimes they come in and they're just about to buy their dream bike, maybe they're retired, and they say, this is my current setup, Phil, I want you to tell me what that needs to be. By the way, my knee's knackered, I'm 60, I've got to, and we adjust it, and it works incredibly well. Now, I think a lot of that can actually be achieved remotely as well through this application, that's why.
Yeah, I'm really excited by the future. In fact, talking about the future, we're going to come back and do some more sessions, which I'm really excited about. We've already got a bit of a syllabus. We want to deep dive into crank lengths. We've just been playing around with some 145 millimeter cranks.
I mean, I'm Mr. Short Cranks, as they call me out there, but the 145. But hey, you know what? Sometimes I like to get, in my bike fit process, I just push the envelope right to the other side and see how people react.
That's what we're doing with this, yeah.
I think one thing we talked about today was, though, in my book, micro adjusters versus macro absorbers, and sometimes you've got to move things quite a lot to understand which one they are, and then work out what's going to work for them. I think it's a great idea.
So back here for a whole crank length deep dive, lot for that. And then I think bike fit window in 2026, like what's the current, the UCI regulations, this new generation of tilt everyone forward. Interested to hear what you're going to say about the bike fit window as we progress through sort of modern bikes. And then over to you guys in the comments. I'm really keen to see what these guys come up with and say questions for Phil Burt. I'd love to get you back for a big community Q&A.
Yeah, we'll throw it all in there, and then if we did distill them down, I know, well, I don't know what they'll be, but I know roughly what they normally are. But yeah, put it in there. We can give, and like I said, I'm really passionate about people getting, if they get free tips and solutions that help them out with the problem, they don't come from Bike Fit, great. Some things are easier to sort out.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Phil. I'm looking forward to working with you and MyVeloFit on this. I think it's a fantastic tool. It's going to save people an awful lot of time and money, and still leave plenty of scope for people getting the help when they need it. So,
brilliant.
Yeah, well done. Thanks very much.
All right, mate.
Cheers.